Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Joe Theodore and it's an honor to be here with you today. So I must make a video on Mercury's last days in Taurus. We are in the final 4 days as I record this video on May 30th, Thursday, May 30th. And I was going to make a video strictly on the conjunction of Uranus and Mercury, but I figured we should talk a little bit more broadly about just the lead up to the conjunction and then also the formal exit after the conjunction and then as it enters Gemini. Because, I think I wouldn't normally actually talk about this transit. And I was contemplating if I even wanted to, make a video on it. Because in recent days, I said to myself, I don't really need to make a video on every little transit just to get videos in during the week. That I really want to focus more on, transits that are, significant, but things that are a little bit more, worth diving deeper into. Because this transit isn't necessarily worth diving deeper into, but it's still very significant to mention. So again, guys, if you are familiar with my work, I'm still trying to get my sea legs, like what and how to talk about certain things going on in the sky and how to incorporate, educational stuff for you guys and just intuitive inspiration on various different kind of spiritual topics that involve astrology, of course. And me being a shamanic astrologer, there's so much for me to talk about and really share with you. But when it comes to Mercury's last days in Taurus, this is very significant. That's why I'm making the video. So I decided, hey, this is really significant to talk about. Now, the reason why it's so significant is because of all of the astrological mayhem, transformation that we have been through since the eclipse season. And I will keep mentioning the eclipse season and the Mercury retrograde in Aries, literally until Mars is out of Aries into Taurus. And honestly, once we get Mercury out of Taurus, because we have still massive personal planet transits hitting very solid trigger points that were extremely potent and active, that were very, very symbolic for things to last for years to come. Like that solar eclipse happening on top of Chiron with a Mercury retrograde happening in the same exact moment in time, along with a legendary and historic Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. These are things that were so fated and set in stone for so many future events to come that any other transits to go over these anchors in the ground, like a pin drop on a map on Google, like there's a pin drop that's in there forever now. And what other planets are going to cruise over the pin drop are going to be affected by what that pin drop represented in the first place. So that's kind of a good visual. I think you can maybe think of this. So Mars transiting the Chiron story, the solar eclipse story, reactivating the solar eclipse story, literally today as I record this, yesterday and today. So we could have been re-feeling some stuff from the eclipse story. We could have actually been resolving a lot of that stuff, like finally putting the action in. So, in a way, I don't think the Mars hitting Chiron is necessarily a catastrophic, like how a Mercury retrograde and, there was a lot shaken around, a lot being stirred up during that time. Where Mars, I think, was the moment where we could really kind of take action and kind of understand how we can approach, some of that stuff we've been going through or that you went through, a little bit more clearly, so Mars really activates the motivation aspect or the ambition to at least want to do something for real about that part of your life, whatever that was showing you or telling you. Now, when it comes to Taurus, we're dealing with that massive new moon we had, which was a brilliant new moon with Venus, which was, home in its domicile of Taurus. We had an exalted moon, new moon, which is a beautiful moment to really begin anew and kind of put some new intentions in the ground to, really come up with a great idea or just know something we wanted to work on, but plant those seeds, right? And I think that that still was tied into some of the stuff that was going on in Aries with the eclipse. So I think those could have been linked. Maybe. But then the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction was very hot. It was very hot, and it was Jupiter's last days in Taurus. So again, there was so much going on in the world, and probably so much coming to light for you in your life. Now, just like I was saying about Mars and Aries hitting a trigger point from the solar eclipse, literally it's on top of Chiron yesterday and today. So Mars will be passing over Chiron as of tomorrow and will be exiting Taurus over the next week and a half, 2 weeks, right? As we get into June. Now, Mercury is in its last days. Mercury has not yet conjoined Uranus, but Mercury is a super fast planet, and it will be conjoining Uranus tomorrow. And then by Sunday, it will be officially exiting Taurus into Gemini. So for the sake of not making this video 30 minutes long or even in the 20 minutes long, I want to just touch on a few things that I think this transit will, manifest, because I think we have to keep in mind whatever the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction brought into your life, and on a collective level, like what has been going on. I linked the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction to so many different things going on in the world, and the world is really the one thing we have to really see how astrology can play out in a massive way. The protests and the uprise within the United States, the outcry for the Israel-Gaza conflict, that was a massive moment. Uranus can strike up protest and really expand, beliefs and stuff like that, right? So that was a perfect example, and still is a perfect example, even though I think the media and potentially the protests have kind of calmed down. But still, the momentum of the conflict itself is still very much alive and very, very strong. And I think Gemini season is going to just fan the flames. All that air is going to fan the flames. And I think the flames are symbolic for what's going on in Aries, because the Chiron story in Aries has so much to do with identity. And that was a major part of our story, most likely as well. The identity we find in that house topic, Aries falls for you. But on a collective stage, I think, especially the conflicts in the world have a lot to do with the identity and the symbolic identity of what a country represents and what a people represent. And I'm not going to get into that now with the identity stuff, but Mercury going over a trigger point that was massive and historic, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. It is now going to conjoin Uranus. And then after it passes through Uranus and heads into Gemini, Uranus will then be by itself until Mars enters the picture, which I'm actually a little quite worried about, because if we're talking about these trigger points, once Mars gets to Uranus and starts stirring up that historic Jupiter-Uranus energy that is anchored in the ground, I think Mars is going to really show its ugly face in some ways, when it comes to the negative and bad karma of the world, right? But for some of us who have a lot of good stuff going on, I bet you that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction could have been really marvelous for you. And that new moon in Taurus could have been a really marvelous moment. And with Mars getting it closer to Uranus at that point, now I'm getting ahead of myself, but just to make a point here, when Mars gets closer to Uranus, this could be a massive moment for extreme manifestation, extreme, energy to really, do something radical, or maybe something very radical is going to come to your life and really give you that, that eye widening, energy to, move forward and take action and to be fearless in something, so. But on the negative side of that, the Mars hitting, when that comes in the future, we're going to see things get very Martian with Uranus, and things can happen very, very suddenly. But with Mercury hitting Uranus, I think we can look at the archetype of what Mercury has always taught us, and that is about swift moving communication, the way we dialogue, the way we input information, the way we output information. This can have a lot to do with anything, that involves communication and electronics and things that involved the linking together of ideas and, just the way information moves about. And yeah, in traditional astrology, there are so many significations for Mercury, but as a shamanic astrologer, I kind of look at things a little bit more multidimensional, a little bit more kind of just the way we integrate things in the psyche and within our being, and how that really plays out in a very holographic way. So Mercury, coming at it from a shamanic perspective, I think we have to look at what is going to be shifted and transformed, and what is going to shape and shift in this moment, and how can we work with that, and how can the world work with that. So in this moment, I think whatever the story has been for a particular person, country, whatever the case may be, wherever in the birth chart the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is or was, wherever Uranus is, we have to expect that there's going to be a lot of very, very sudden, out of nowhere, out of left field, extreme bursts of information that we may know what to do with and we may not know what to do with. But when we're dealing with Uranus, which is another very electrical, shocking, out of nowhere shamanic revelation type of planet, the Tower card in the tarot, and when we're dealing with Mercury, which is also a very electric archetype, a very electric planet, a very electric consciousness. So when they meet, we can really expect sparks to fly. We can really expect, like, I'm sort of just getting like a vision of, like, when like a power line kind of breaks and then the sparks are just like shattering, they're sparking out of control. I kind of feel like that's kind of what we're going to see, just like these weird out of control sparks flying everywhere. But for some of us, that actually might be really, really beneficial, because maybe we've been waiting for, a lot of things to kind of manifest in our life and show up in our life that can be very exciting and very electric. And sometimes, during the holidays, those little sparkler things are really fun, right? It brings life to the party. It brings life to our experience. So I think this moment, again, is very, very tied to whatever your Jupiter-Uranus story was, and that new moon, intention, even though the full moon in Sagittarius was kind of like, we had more information about our new moon in Taurus story. But still, this is an activation where we're dealing with the Mercurial. We're dealing with the Gemini energy, right? We're dealing with some Virgo energy. So we're dealing with the way things are orchestrated in a mental way, the way things are communicated, the way things are integrated in a mental way. And because Mercury rules Gemini, and Gemini is jam-packed right now, right? With Jupiter and Venus and the Sun, and Venus and the Sun are very, very close together. So we're definitely getting like somewhat of a Cazimi action yet, even though the for real Cazimi doesn't happen for another week-ish. But we're still kind of getting the mojo and the feelings of what the Gemini creative and beautiful sun-illuminated Venus, might play out for us. And of course, Jupiter making these trines to Pluto, and really everything else going on in Gemini, making those trines to Pluto. We're really starting to, I feel like we're seeing this pulse of whatever is going to be transformed in our Gemini story dominantly. But this Mercury-Uranus conjunction and the passing through Uranus, I think we're going to see a lot of mental, even very psychic insight. So psychic information, things that just come suddenly, things that just happen suddenly in the world, right? That we just see, and we might be getting shockwaved with information in the world that could be shocking, right? I don't want to bring in politics to the mix, but I mean, I know Trump has been in the news a lot for a lot of the stuff he's been accused of. And again, I don't really care what your beliefs are on this. I'm just coming at this from a very precise view. If something were to be revealed, in regards to that, that would be a pretty, a moment of divine timing during this conjunction or during these couple of days leading up until its ingress into Gemini, where we can see some shocking things. There could be some shocking things in the news, shocking things with, like, for example, his involvement in stuff, but really just things that are shocking, and some of this stuff we might already be anticipating. We already might have some intuitive and psychic insight into. Some things might just, come to us, and like, if we've been waiting for something, This could be like a moment we get that like surprise phone call or that surprise email, or that we have that fated encounter. I think this could also be for some of you love, right? Because we have Venus and the Sun in the house of Mercury, in the house of communication and swift movement and, being really super social. That's definitely one aspect of the energies of what Gemini can be doing right now. And this can definitely be a moment, for a lot of people to meet someone suddenly, or to come in contact with something or someone that you love or care for very suddenly. So we have to keep all of those things in mind, But again, I think really try to focus on your Jupiter-Uranus story. But a lot of the things I literally just said a moment ago about the love stuff, the creative stuff, things coming out of nowhere, that could be new, unrelated to the Jupiter-Uranus story. These are all very relevant and all very, important to consider, for the potentials here. Then when Mercury gets into Gemini, we will have Mercury home. We will have Mercury directly trining Pluto, or Pluto directly trining Pluto. So Pluto will greatly influence Mercury just as soon as it ingresses. And then it will greatly begin influencing all of the other transits in the sky in Gemini. And then within days after that, we will have a gorgeous new moon in Gemini, which I will make a video on very, very soon to release, because that's probably going to be one of my next big astrological videos to make and post here. But yeah, guys, I think that's all I want to say today. Please, if you have stayed to the end, thank you so much for, watching all the way through. Please like the video, give it a thumbs up, smash the like button, as they say, because that really helps the algorithm. Share my channel. Subscribe if you're new. Leave a comment, even if it's just an emoji, because commenting really helps the algorithm. And I do respond to almost every comment. And yeah, guys, that's all I have for you today. Sending you so much love, and I will see you very soon.